I think what Dr. Fauci said is that if people don't take these things seriously, that the numbers could continue to spike. So,
they're spiking right now.
Again, what I'd say is the numbers are up. We're obviously watching this very carefully. We think that there is the right balance, and we're working with the states on the health issues and the economic issues. We'll go to the next question. Yes.
Mr. Secretary, there is a record number of new infections every day. Does the White House regret encouraging states to open as quickly as it did? And do you think some of that is backfiring?
No, absolutely not. I think we've had a very careful plan, again, working with the states. This is primarily the states' responsibility, but working with the states.
Or it could be your responsibility, but I guess it's not. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin with that exchange with reporters yesterday. Joining us now, Senate Minority Leader Democrat Chuck Schumer of New York. A lot to get to with you, Senator. Thank you for being on. The president is saying this. Happy July 4th to you, yes. Is this coronavirus situation under control, as the president and some of his staff members seem to believe?
Not even close. And for Steve Mnuchin to say if people take this seriously, the number one person who hasn't taken this seriously is his boss, President Trump. From the very beginning, we all know he said it's a hoax. He said it'll go away in a few days. He said don't worry about it. And throughout, as early as March 6th, I asked him to invoke the Defense Production Act for testing. We are so short of tests. We've just reported that in Arizona, which is one of the epicenters, there are huge lines for tests, and they don't have enough, and it's because there is no national supply chain working. You cannot. Mnuchin says it's up to the states. No. When it comes to testing and having enough tests, it's a federal responsibility. In the COVID 3 bill and the COVID 3.5 bill, we put in more money, we put in more authority. For whatever reason, and you know, I saw some of your show earlier, Mika, it's just befuddling. The president refuses to use it. He's in his own little egotistical world. Whatever seems to strike his ego that day is what he pays attention to. But amazingly enough, there are no people around him to say, you're messing up the country and you're even messing up your political future with doing this. I have never seen such incompetence, such focus on self, such danger to a country caused by presidential indecision, egotism, and just lying, not facing the truth because he doesn't want to face it. We've never seen anything like it. A leading epidemiologist told me that if either, this is not political, if either Bush or Obama had been president, if we had some degree of competence in the White House, the number of deaths and the number of cases would be much lower when it started and much, much lower now. Ask yourself this question. Why is Europe and Asian countries doing so much better than us? It's not that there's a mystery here. It's they had some leadership. They had leadership on testing. They had leadership on social distancing. They had leadership on contact tracing. And there's none of that here. None of that. It's appalling. And I think for the first time, Mika, the American people are catching on that not only is this president sort of an infantile narcissist, not only is he a liar, he'll just lie about things, but he's an incompetent, and it hurts everybody, his incompetence.
Let's go to Mike Barnicle for the next question. Mike?
Senator, the United States Senate is out and won't be back until July 20th, as I understand it. Rental forbearance, eviction forbearance, extended unemployment benefits for those benefits that are about to run out. That's all on the table. What's the plan to help millions of American families?
Well, again, you know, this is Donald Trump and the Republican majority. Mitch McConnell and the Republican senators are so darn afraid of Donald Trump that even though there's a crisis, Mitch McConnell said the other day, let's assess the situation. Assess the situation. The worst health crisis we've had since the 20s, the worst economic crisis we've had since the Depression, and they're busy, you know, twiddling their thumbs, assessing the situation. And as you said, Barnicle, there are cliffs coming. On July 24th, rental assistance ends. Millions will be thrown out of their homes. On July 31st, unemployment insurance ends. People who lost their jobs through no faults of their own won't have money. And starting now, July 1st, many state and local governments don't have the money they can't print money like the federal government. They have to balance their budgets. and they don't have the money, and hundreds of thousands, millions probably, of state and local workers, the kinds of people who pick up the garbage and protect us and keep us safe and who handle health care, are all going to be out of work because the states don't have enough money. So there are all these cliffs, and McConnell says he's assessing the situation. Now, my prediction is that they will be forced to come to the table, although it's kind of late and right against the deadline. Why? Because there is a crisis, and their constituents, there is a letter from what they call the Big Seven, the national governors, the national state legislators, the national mayors, all the local governments, Republican and Democrat, probably as many Republicans on that letter as Democrats, telling their senators, we have to act now. So the pressure on the Republican senators is mounting. They're afraid to buck Donald Trump, who has shown no leadership. And McConnell is just Trump's henchman. He does just what Trump wants. And so we're waiting till the end. They're going to be forced to do something. We Democrats are not going to settle for tiny little measures, just do a little of this, a little of that. We are going to do what we did in the last two COVID bills and say, unless we have really robust aid, the HEROES Act that the House passed should be our model. We're going to hold out for that, and we'll win. We won in the last two cases, and I think we'll win this time too.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.